FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's 4/17/18. We've been watching the goings-on in Washington. Hey, Syria, the missile attack, the so-called. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But what's the real reason? Why is it happening? Hey, first, as always, send us an email. I got a bunch of them yesterday about Gerald Celenti's appearance on the show. I'd say it was about 5-1 negative, but Gerald's got his own views. Gerald isn't afraid to express them, and I find him refreshing and entertaining. Sometimes perhaps a little grating, but all around his heart's in the right place. So email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. Hotline for right now is 914-424-4142. Leave a message. We might just play it. And so what's happening here? We had the Syrian missile attack. We had the chemical attack. Is it real or is it a false flag? That's what I'd like to know. Well, Matt Nye is with us now. Matt, you are the chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus, seasoned political activist. We welcome you back to the show, Matt.
Thanks, Kerry. Appreciate you having me on.
So, Syria. Is this a false flag? It sure doesn't. You look at it, Assad's an evil guy. There's no question about it. His father was even more evil than he is. But does it make sense when you're winning a war to go and attack your own people with chlorine gas and in a move that's sure to bring the U.S. Repercussions and world repercussions? Why does somebody do that?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's highly questionable. There's highly suspect. That makes no sense from his perspective. That's the one thing that he could do that would essentially invite a lot of intervention from other parties. And so I agree. Doesn't make much sense from a strategic standpoint. At the same time, we're talking about dictators and despots. Who knows? I mean, these are, maybe not the most reasonable people in the world. But again, you would think, from a purely self-interest standpoint, that would, not be a move you would make when he's at this stage of the game. So I tend to agree. It's odd judgment, to say the least.
And then what about Trump's response? It didn't seem like it was overwhelming force meeting an immovable object, so to speak. They shot 100 missiles. Big deal. What comes of that?
I think, honestly, he's kind of painted himself into this corner where he did draw a red line, and he's going to be the guy that adheres to the red line. So I think it's it's more symbolic than anything. Obviously, I'm sure you've seen the tweets of his back when Obama was talking about doing something where he explicitly, Trump explicitly tweeted, "You must get congressional authorization." And now, obviously, that's gone completely out the window, and he's acting, on his own without congressional approval. So that little bit of hypocrisy is quite fascinating to me. And the logic last time that he used was, they showed me these horrible pictures of the women and children dying, and I understand. There's no question. I'm sure those images were horrible, and dying from chemical weapons is a horrible way to die. But in war, does it really matter how, whether you're being shelled to death or shot or stabbed or killed with chemical weapons? I'm not sure the manner in which we're killing the people is justification for sidestepping the Constitution. So that didn't really sit well with me. I thought it was more of a, Obama let this go, and I'm not going to let it go because I'm a man of action. So I can see the logic in wanting to, make the statement that we're not going to, let these guys get away with it. But at the same time, to me, the U.S. is not in imminent danger from any of these acts, and it just doesn't make sense, from our perspective. I think, one of the reasons that Trump was elected was because he did run on a non-interventionist type foreign policy, and now we're right back to where we're kind of sticking our nose in where it doesn't belong. So,
yeah, well, we do a lot of that, and it usually doesn't work out too well, not in the modern world. So, question is, where's he going forward here? Where do you see the administration heading with all this?
I don't know that they're going to do anything. I guess it all really depends on Russia, quite frankly. I mean, that's kind of what I think everybody's waiting to see is how the Russians react. And so far, it seems to be pretty, they seem to be pretty tempered on their side. So this could just be the reason he delayed was because he was giving the Russians time to move their assets out of harm's way. And, maybe this is the end of it again for now. I guess it's been almost a year since the last time we did this. So maybe, he's made his point. And if the Russians don't do anything, then I guess the civil war over there continues on and we see what happens. But like you said, Assad is essentially won at this point. So other than the damage they've done to his airfields and things, I'm not sure, what good comes of it.
Yeah, well, good question. Supposedly the Russians just did a huge cyber attack against the U.S. and the U.K. Don't know if it's really true or not, but that was the rumor this morning. So maybe that was.
Well, they do that anyway, though, right?
Yeah. Well, not all at once.
I think that's kind of par for the course, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it's yeah.
Yeah, well, not usually all at once. So what do you see happening with Trump and Mueller and the whole investigation here? It's kind of entered a new realm.
I will say the whole thing, raiding Cohen's office the way they did, and especially going to hotel room that he's staying at, and all of that. To me, it's either one of two things. They either have absolutely nothing, and they are desperate to get anything, and they thought that would be, it would be a good way to get it, right? If you can essentially breach attorney-client privilege, or vice versa, they've got something really damning, and that's why they did it. And it's hard to say at this point which way it goes, but I've got to think that, I know if I personally were in that boat and the FBI had just raided my attorney's office and everything, just based on what we've seen of the FBI's behavior, it's very clear that you cannot trust them an inch to follow the rules. So all this nonsense about, there's supposed to be a firewall and a clean team, and we're going to segregate, what's privileged. I don't see that. Who takes any of that seriously? Like, does anybody really believe that after the incredible, what we've seen of the FBI and the misbehavior and malfeasance and everything else, does anybody think that they're going to follow the rules on this? Because I sure don't. I mean, they have zero credibility. And so just from that perspective alone, I have great sympathy for Trump and Cohen and any of Cohen's other clients. I think it's all two of them.
All two of them, right? Well, hey, to say that the guy wasn't a lawyer is just totally fraudulent. That was the argument the U.S. government was making to justify why there shouldn't be a privilege. As far as I'm concerned, you got a admission to the bar. You're an attorney, and the nature of the relationship. A lot of times, attorneys get very close to their clients, build friendships, and have relationships, and yet that doesn't make them any less an attorney or any less representing him. Now, the fact that he had one client doesn't matter. It's like a doctor who has one wealthy patient, and that's it. Sure. It doesn't make him any less a doctor just because he's not out there in general practice. So all of this is purely fraudulent, and they got like the judge who is totally in the can. Officiated at Soros's last marriage in 2013. She's a Hillary person. They tried to make her attorney general way back during the Clinton administration after the first one had left. And what happened then was that she was found that she had hired illegal aliens to be her nanny. No big crime. That, interestingly enough, that dirt was spilled by probably people connected to former head of Drexel Burnham Lampert, who Kimba Wood had sentenced to 10 years in prison for all sorts of wrongdoing, Michael Milken. So it was a little bit of payback getting her back. But obviously, Hillary picked her. Bill left the personnel decisions for the most part to Hillary, which is why Vince Foster was there, Webb Hubbell, all these ne'er-do-wells from Arkansas. So the point is, she's in the can for Hillary. In my opinion here, Matt, this is a bigger issue. There's some dirt lurking that's going to be released about Hillary, and it's going to be devastating. I'm not going to speculate what it's about, but it's really intense, and it almost became an election issue. It came probably from Anthony Weiner's laptop, which was chock full of all of Hillary's secrets, and the race is on to find dirt on Trump so they can trade. It's total 100% speculation, no basis in fact. It's simply my opinion, but gleaning it from the facts, you just don't go raiding a lawyer's office unless you're desperate, because there's all sorts of negative ramifications. My prediction is it's going to go to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. They're going to punt it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's going to have to decide this case. Normally, you don't have the ability to appeal non-final decisions of a trial court judge. However, there are exceptions to that rule, and those exceptions are going to come into play here. I'd be surprised if it just gets dropped here. In addition, and again, my opinion, Rod Rosenstein is on his way out. He will be replaced by somebody who's going to rein in, if not disband, the Mueller investigation. According to some people, once the DOJ Inspector General's report comes out, the basis for Mueller to exist at all will have been negated, and the investigation will be shut down. What's your feeling about what's happening here?
Well, it goes back to, where it's so frustrating, and I can only imagine how President Trump feels with, Sessions is essentially MIA. It's just fascinating how this is all, gone off the rails like it has in their. They're essentially running open loop. Like you say, we've got no evidence of Russian collusion whatsoever. And now we're raiding his, personal attorney's office.
Yeah.
And so I think, I have to think that just the, at least the regular folks that I talk to, like in my Rotary Club and people that I talk to during my normal business life, this raid on Cohen's office seems to be a step too far. Like even regular rank and file working folks understand that attorney-client privilege is pretty sacred, and even they're going, "Wow, that's." Kind of over the line or over the top. And so I think it's, the biggest question is how do, I don't know that the FBI and the Justice Department ever recover the trust. How do you, it's just so brazen. They're so blatantly, like you say, violating rules, violating law. You've just got all of this evidence with Strzok and all these other people where they're, clearly out to get the guy. And how do you recover from? I just don't see how they. I mean, I just, I got to tell you, if somebody from the FBI showed up at my doorstep, I'd be terrified. This
as well you should be. As well you should be. Well, it's obvious. Look, I mean, this concept of the nation's premier law enforcement agency or the premier law enforcement agency in the world is bunk. I mean, You know that J. Edgar Hoover was compromised, that for many years they weren't even allowed to mention the word mafia in the FBI. They never went after the mob in real force till much, much later. And we won't even get into J. Edgar Hoover's alleged proclivities because I think there hasn't been a real case made about it, but there's suspicions. But what is known is that John Kennedy's secretary did state that on the eve of the Democratic convention, back when Kennedy was running for president, he was not going to pick LBJ. He had no desire. They hated him. They hated each other. And J. Edgar Hoover came in and said, look, here are the pictures of you with Judith Exner, and I'm going to go public with it unless you pick LBJ as your VP nominee. And, we know that J. Edgar Hoover had files on all of Congress and all of his enemies, and he didn't hesitate to exercise leverage. So this is the nation's premier law enforcement agency and all the other misdeeds.
Yeah, you saw Mueller's, or I'm sure you heard some of the highlights of Mueller's interview with Stephanopoulos. Mm-hmm. And when he asked him about the Steele dossier, he basically says, well, I still don't know. Yeah, we can't know if those allegations are. You're the guy. You have access to all of this apparatus, and you're telling us you expect us to take, seriously that you can't confirm or deny whether that dossier was legit or not. I mean, it just makes no sense. Like you say, how is that, that guy represents the premier intelligence agency now?
Total fraud. Hey, what about when Stephanopoulos, not really anxious to get to the truth, but he did ask him a good question. He said, you told Trump about the dossier, and if you're not familiar with the Steele dossier, that's where it's all sorts of nefarious allegations were made against Trump, that he hired prostitutes to urinate on the bed in the hotel where Obama stayed when he was in Moscow, and all sorts of ridiculous things. And that the president's attorney had been to Prague, which he swears to this day never has been, probably was a different Michael Cohen. But he asks him, did you tell Trump, the president, that the dossier had been paid for by Hillary Clinton? And, Comey looks like he got caught with his pants down, around his legs. And he said, no, I didn't. And like Stephanopoulos was a true journalist, which he's not. He's a hack. He's a DNC party hack.
For a moment there, right?
Yeah.
For a moment.
Well, that was accidental. It was accidental. But he would have said, well, why didn't you tell him? Don't you think it was relevant? Don't you think the president should have known? And do you think that impedes the credibility of what was, I could think of 20 questions putting on my old lawyer's hat.
And isn't that right? Isn't that your job, right? As the senior intelligence official to provide the president with the context of what is happening?
So I love Trump's tweet. He was a slime ball, and I am proud to have fired him. And, the guy has got his 15 minutes. It's like he's commenting on the size of Trump's hands, that he's shorter than he thought he was. He's only 6'3", inch taller than me, but he's shorter than Comey thought. Comey is 6'8". They probably had to buy him a special chair.
At that height, I was going to say pretty much anybody is short, right? Yeah, but I mean, I met Trump at Freedom Fest, and he's a big guy. So I'm 6 foot. Like I say, he's a big guy. So.
Yeah, hey, I've met him before, and like I say, he 6'3" is well above the average male height, which I think is 5'10". For Americans. So the point is that this is like gossipy. One guy, writer for National Review Online, who Trump has totally repudiated, called it a bitchy book. Actually, it was Chris Wallace called it a bitchy book. And
I think Comey's in a rush to sell books because he's going to need the money for his legal defense. Is kind of part of I'm thinking that's why he's moving so fast. Is he's probably trying to build up as big a war chest as he can so he can afford his legal defense bill. So,
well, maybe he needs to start up a GoFundMe campaign like his subordinate Andrew McCabe, and probably could pick up a couple million there. Look, the guy is just crooked. The guy is disgraceful, and you just look at him and he's so weaselly. He's a weasel. He gets around, and he threw all of his subordinates under the bus. He threw, what about Loretta Lynch, sweet Loretta? I mean, he threw her under the bus, and pretty soon, all of these ex-Obama officials, it's going to be like rats in a tenement fire, and they're all going to be heading for the door, except there ain't going to be a door because there's going to be flames, and they're all going to fry unless deals get cut now. And that's what I think Mueller is all about. He's the guy who is trying to keep the truth from coming out about all the nefarious misdeeds, monitoring the president, all of the Uranium One. I mean, Matt, we could spend 3 shows just on the scandals of the Obama administration, fast and furious. I mean, you just go down the list. It's one after the next, the corruption, everything else, the theft that took place. It's just mind-boggling.
Do you see the Justice Department pursuing that? I mean, that's kind of where I vacillate. I'm like, okay, are they slow walking this because they're trying to manipulate it for political purposes? Like, are they waiting to get closer to the midterms? Are they going to try to drag this out all the way until the next presidential cycle? And then, boom, all of a sudden these guys start getting arrested and Trump's vindicated and he, sweeps into the next 4 years. Like, it's so frustrating.
Well, a lot of this
to not see.
You can't. Well, look, Trump is the master of strategy, 4D chess, whatever. You talk to any progressive and they think he's a moron and he just does things helter-skelter. But he always says, I'm not going to signal my next move or what I plan to do because that only benefits my opposition. Whether it's Russia or whether it's the DNC or Mueller, nobody knows what he's doing. To me, Matt, the pardon of Scooter Libby is a seminal event and an indication there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than you ever thought. We got Huber, I call him J. Edgar Hoover, and, we're going to see what that guy's about. But my guess is he's been with the IG's office since November, at least, of last year. He's been reviewing all the evidence. That's why we don't really need a special counsel. We don't really want a special counsel if we don't need one, because if this guy's actually going to do the job, then he knows everything already. You don't want a special counsel who's got to get his legs, his feet under the desk and learn the job. Hey, I could talk to you about this all day, but more importantly, Matt, where do we find out about what you do? Yeah,
we're on the web at rlc.org. We're on Twitter at @Liberty Caucus is the handle for Twitter. And for those who aren't familiar with the organization, we've been around since 1991. Founded as the libertarian wing of the Republican Party. That was some big L libertarians decided the third party approach wasn't working. And so they basically decided to work within the Republican Party to espouse the libertarian philosophy within the party and try to get those types of officials elected. So,
well, it's a noble battle. It's been uphill all the way. And I really do, my hat's off to you for really sticking to it, because, we're talking about the Democratic Party, but, they're both just crime families. Both parties are just big crime families. And, this is the beauty of Trump. He totally exposed the Republican Party, the establishment, for what it really is.
Oh, yeah, no question. And it is. That's far and away the most frustrating thing for me is, watching the Republicans. They get the House, they get the Senate, they get the presidency, and then they renege on just the most basic campaign promises. The omnibus spending bill, which was a disaster. It's just, the health, they failed on health care. At least they did get tax reform through, so that's good. But it's just very frustrating to see how they can't get just the basics, just the most basic stuff they can't seem to get done.
Well, it's really a simple matter. They're totally co-opted. They're pawns of the Chamber of Commerce, Donahue, and they don't want to do anything because if they did, what would happen then? The inability to repeal Obamacare is really just a symptom and proof of everything that Trump exposed during the campaign. And we're just going to have to see how this thing shakes out. But everybody's head potentially is on the chopping block, and that's a good thing. Hey, by the way, join the conversation, be a part of the show. Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. Thanks for those emails about Gerald Celente, very interesting guest. You can leave a message. I have to go through them and edit them, obviously. Right now, the hotline's 914-424-4142. 914-424-4142. Matt, always a pleasure having you on. We will connect with you again real soon. We'll see you in Freedom Fest this summer. Can't wait for the next one. I had to miss the last one. It was a family event. But hey, good luck. Keep up the fight.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.